Chapter 41 Effective Unicorn Jade Liquid, Secret Realm. Returning home. It was discovered that Chen Shiwei had not yet returned. Ever since she won first place in the Twin Cities trial competition, she was valued by the Academy's dean, Patriarch Shinjin, and was taken in as a disciple, bringing her by her side to personally teach her. It was said that she had to go to the wilderness to kill often, so she was often not at home. However, although Chen Shiwei couldn't return as a person, she was very attached to Chu Mo. Every 3 days, she would send someone to send a bunch of ferocious beast meat to nourish Chu Mo's body. It was a good thing that she couldn't come back often, otherwise, if previously Chu Mo had gone out from time to time and couldn't be seen for a few days each time, it might have made Chen Shiwei suspicious. It's just so much ferocious beast meat, when will it be finished? Looking at the ferocious beast meat that had already piled up inside the house, Chu Mo couldn't help but show a helpless face shaking his head. He dispersed the thought from his mind. After taking a bath, Chu Mo directly came to the practice room. Try the effects of the unicorn jade liquid. Taking out a black unicorn horn like a half-moon from his storage bag, he couldn't help but have a look of anticipation on his face. Using his battle knife, he made an incision on the unicorn horn, and in a flash, a drop of jade liquid that emitted a faint fragrance dripped down. It was rumored that the jade liquid from the one-horned rhinoceros's unicorn horn contained majestic energy that could accelerate a martial artist's chi and blood-quenching speed by 10 times. And now, once this jade liquid appeared, even though he hadn't swallowed it yet, just by smelling the scent, Chu Mo felt that the chi and blood in his body had already begun to become active gudong. Without hesitation, he directly drank a mouthful of the jade liquid with his head held high. It was cool and heavy. Just after the jade liquid entered his mouth, it transformed into a liquid that entered his veins, carrying a heaviness and coldness that made the flow of chi and blood seem to become much heavier. Feeling this strange movement, Chu Mo did not hesitate for a second and directly executed the Yuan power body forging method, guiding the energy of the jade liquid to circulate in the blood vessels, quenching his own chi and blood. At the middle stage of a martial artist, one needed to quench the chi and blood. If the chi and blood were made heavy and reached the point of being like mercury, it would be a sign that the blood refining had come to fruition. At that time, there would be a force of 100,000 pounds, and between each move, it would carry the ability to open mountains and crack rocks, which could be described as terrifying and unparalleled 1 hour later. Chu Mo finished absorbing the first mouthful of jade liquid and only felt that the chi and blood of his entire body seemed to have become 1 point thicker. After waving his fists a few times and feeling the churning of his chi and blood, a flash of brightness appeared in Chu Mo's eyes. It's really no less than the best treasure in quenching chi and blood. Just a mouthful of jade liquid has allowed my chi and blood quenching to grow by a hair, and my strength has even increased by at least 200 pounds. Chu Mo's mouth was tinged with a smile, his voice faintly tinged with surprise. Continue. Chu Mo rested for a moment, then he once again drank a mouthful of jade liquid. Time flowed. Without realizing it, a night had already passed. When the sun began to rise, Chu Mo opened his eyes, and the essence in his eyes flickered after a night of cultivation. The jade liquid contained in one unicorn horn had already been completely absorbed by him, and the gain brought to him was also extremely terrifying. 2,100 pounds of strength. A normal martial artist would need at least 1.5 years of time if they wanted to increase their strength by this much. And Chu Mo, with the help of the unicorn jade liquid, had only used 1 night. Such a speed of progress was truly appalling. The effect of the chi and blood quenching is also very obvious. One can clearly feel that the chi and blood are much thicker than yesterday. And after consuming 1 portion of the unicorn jade liquid tonight, there are still 9 portions left. Keep cultivating. Chu Mo secretly cheered himself up. The next few days, Chu Mo then stayed closed at home, absorbing the jade liquid night and day, quenching his chi and blood, and polishing his fleshly body 10 days later. Chu Mo had already absorbed all 10 portions of the unicorn jade liquid, and his physical body strength had skyrocketed by 20,000 pounds at the beginning of the day, plus the time he spent following the team to the Changfeng base after he became a mid-stage martial artist was also a period of unremitting cultivation. Therefore, his physical body base strength had reached 76,000 pounds. Less than half of the strength of 100,000 pounds from the late stage of martial artist was left. But the unicorn jade liquid has been consumed. Chu Mo sighed. Although with his cultivation talent, even without the unicorn jade liquid, he could ensure that he would be able to quench the remaining qi and blood within half a year and enter the late stage of martial artist. But this was still too slow. Somehow, ever since he came back from Changfeng base, Chu Mo always had a sense of urgency in his heart, always wanting to raise his strength up as soon as possible. He didn't know where this uneasiness came from. However, he attached great importance to it in his heart and didn't dare to have any negligence. Make a trip to the Jade House and purchase some treasures that accelerate the tempering of qi and blood. And, by the way, ask Mo Shanshan if there is still unicorn jade liquid in her hands. If there is, then try to purchase some. Chu Mo made up his mind. At that moment, he took a bath and went out to head to Chuyu building. He still had yuan stones and ferocious beast materials worth millions on him. Instead of putting them in his storage bag to fall into dust, it would be better to exchange them for cultivation resources to raise his strength up. Traveling along the way. After half an hour, one had arrived in the Jade Tower. Greetings, Guest Minister Chu. Just as he entered, a female sales clerk greeted him, and when he saw Chu Mo clearly, he hurriedly saluted. Chu Mo nodded slightly and asked, "Is Master Mo available?" "Yes, are you here to see Master Mo?" "Please also ask Guest Minister Chu to wait for a moment, I'll go inform." The female shopkeeper inquired. After receiving Chu Mo's response, she turned around and went upstairs. Within a moment, she came down. "Guest Minister Chu, Master Mo invites you up." "Thank you." Chu Mo nodded and took a step up. On the second floor, Chu Mo met Mo Shanshan, who was looking at books. Wearing a long green and red dress that reflected her skin that was superior to snow, she was eye-catching. "Chu Mo, are you looking for me for something?" Mo Shanshan made a pot of tea for Chu Mo and asked, curiously. She could feel that Chu Mo's strength had risen by a large margin again, but she had already seen things like this from Chu Mo too many times, so she was already somewhat surprised. "I came over this time because I want to purchase some unicorn jade liquid to use to quench my qi and blood. I don't know if you still have it in your hand?" Chu Mo said. "The 10 portions of unicorn jade liquid that I gave you before was the last stock I had in my hand, and now I don't have any more." Mo Shanshan shook her head. The moment those words came out, Chu Mo revealed a flash of disappointment. But just at that moment. But then he heard Mo Shanshan say, "However, you've come at the right time. Although the unicorn jade liquid is no longer available, the Merchant Alliance has just collected some blood refining dawn from other bases, which were originally intended to be listed in the auction 10 days from now, so if you want it, you can purchase it at the internal price." At those words, Chu Mo immediately brightened up. The blood refining pill, as the name implied, had the effect of quenching qi and blood. Although the effect was not as good as the 10-fold increase of the unicorn jade liquid, it could increase by up to 3 times, and even reach a 5-fold increase if absorbed well. It was considered a rare blood refining treasure. This could really be a lost cause and a gain. Without the slightest hesitation, Chu Mo directly decided to purchase it. 3 bottles of blood refining pills, a total of 30 pills. Even though it was purchased with a 20% discount on the internal price with the status of a guest minister, it still cost Chu Missouri close to 600,000 lower-grade yuan stones. The exorbitant price was staggering. However, Chu Mo had no intention of being distressed, and instead felt quite satisfied. The 3 bottles of blood refining pills were enough to support him until the quenching of qi and blood was completed. After accomplishing his goal, Chu Mo then couldn't wait to plan to go home. However, just as he was about to say goodbye, he heard Mo Shanshan say, "Chu Mo, there's a secret realm, I don't know if you're willing to go?" Chapter 42 Blood Refinement Great Achievement. A secret realm? Chu Mo's heart stirred. The secret realm was something he had naturally heard of. Ever since the great change in heaven and earth, some small worlds would occasionally appear in various parts of the blue star, and these small worlds were called secret realms because they were attached to the blue star and were generally very hidden. The so-called secret realm, some rich in resources, there are mountains, water and life, and even produce fierce beasts as well as a variety of heavenly treasures, while some are very barren, even grass and trees do not grow. But despite this, once any party secret realm appears, will cause outsiders to scramble, and even set off a bloody storm such as today on the blue star. Many big forces or big base, the reason why has been able to stand, masters come out, is because all have their own large secret realm. Inside the Yuan Qi sufficient, rich resources, is the big forces and big base of the heritage. And such a precious secret realm. Mo Shanshan actually asked him if he was willing to go. Could it be that Mo Shanshan held a secret realm in her hands? Seemingly knowing what Chu Mo had in mind, Mo Shanshan nodded slightly and said, "Not bad. I do hold a secret realm place in my hands." Truth be told, the treasure that you and the others escorted back to the Chongfeng base previously was the secret key to opening this secret realm. Chu Mo nodded. But then asked, "The secret realm is so precious, why did you invite me again? Aren't you afraid that I will do something to kill and seize the treasure in the secret realm?" As he spoke, he looked at Mo Shanshan, a searching look in his eyes, because this secret realm is one of the smallest spaces. The spatial barriers are extremely fragile, even the breath of a martial master can cause it to crumble, so only martial artists below the level of martial masters can enter. Mo Shanshan said helplessly, "Anne, this kind of secret realm will often have very great danger again, and Chu Mo, although you are in the middle stage of the martial artist realm, but your strength can be comparable to that of a martial artist. If we have you to help us, it will allow us to explore the certainty of a great increase. As for killing for treasure." Speaking here, Mo Shanshan paused, then added, "These days of getting along, I consider myself to be somewhat knowledgeable, and I can be sure that you, Chu Mo, are not such a person. What's more, I only need the Xianyuan chalcedony in the secret realm. In addition to cultivating in the secret realm, all the other things, none of them, can be attributed to you." After saying that, Mo Shanshan's gaze fell on Chu Mo, her eyes clear. "So, are you willing to go with me?" Phew. Chu Mo took a long breath. It had to be said. The temptation brought about by a secret realm was indeed too great. Even he was somewhat unable to resist it. Not to mention that the conditions given by Mo Shanshan were also extremely generous. All the treasures obtained belonged to him. The amount of treasures that a secret realm could produce was so rich that almost every martial artist with common sense was well aware of it. And Mo Shanshan still gave such a promise, so it could be seen that the sincerity was huge. After thinking about it, Chu Mo nodded and said, "I am willing to enter." The moment these words came out, a smile immediately appeared on Mo Shanshan's face. "According to my speculation, there are still 20 days left before the opening of the secret realm. During this period of time you can properly prepare and wait to depart at any time." After saying that, Mo Shanshan stood up with a bright smile and said, "I hope we can work together happily." "I hope so," Chu Mo also said with a smile. Afterward, they chatted for a while, before Chu Mo proposed to take his leave. Mo Shanshan personally sent him to the door. Just as the two were about to part, Chu Mo suddenly paused, turned around, and asked curiously, "By the way, I still don't know what Miss Mo's strength is today?" "Peak martial artist realm," Mo Shanshan said truthfully. The moment these words came out, it really set off shock in Chu Mo's heart. After all, he did know that Mo Shanshan's age was a year younger than him, and she was only 17 this year. In other words, Mo Shanshan had already become a peak martial artist realm after only 2 years of cultivation. But then, Chu Mo felt somewhat taken for granted. For Mo Shanshan to be able to control a base branch of the Jade Merchant Alliance at such a young age, one could tell that her origins were bound to be extraordinary, and she was definitely one of the top echelons even at the Merchant Alliance headquarters. With the Jade Merchant Alliance's countless resources, coupled with her own top-notch cultivation talent, it makes sense that Mo Shanshan could have such an achievement. Besides, his Chu Mo's cultivation speed wasn't weak either. Strictly speaking, he had only been cultivating for less than half a year so far, and in such a short period of time, he was already on the verge of entering the late stage of the martial artist stage, and he had a battle power that could overwhelm a martial artist, and could even be compared to a grandmaster. It was enough to call the progress amazing. Thinking about this on the road, soon Chu Mo had returned home. There's still 20 days to go before it's time for the secret realm to open. Taking advantage of this period of time, it's the right time to work hard on my cultivation and completely raise my realm to the late martial artist stage. Thinking like this, Chu Mo took out the blood refining pills that he had purchased at great expense. Pouring out one, he directly put it into his mouth. As soon as the elixir was imported, it immediately rolled into the abdomen, and immediately, the thick medicinal power emanated out and merged into the blood vessels. Absorb. Quench the qi and blood. Chu Mo immediately executed the Yuan power body forging technique, directing the energy to run through the blood vessels, quenching the qi and blood, and as the qi and blood continued to circulate, a violent clattering sound also came from the blood veins around his body, as if it was like a crashing sea, a raging river, and an endless stream of water, constantly washing away. The next time, Chu Mo then concentrated and cultivated night and day. Every time the medicinal power of the blood refining dan was digested, he would immediately swallow one again, and so on. A dozen days later, Chu Mo once again swallowed a blood refining pill and was performing the body forging technique as usual to quench his qi and blood. Suddenly, the qi and blood in his body suddenly surged wildly, as if it was a rolling torrent that was out of control. However, Chu Mo did not panic, and instead, he even revealed a look of surprise. He directly ended the body forging method, then took out his alloy battle knife, and with a flash of the knife, he picked through his finger. A drop of scarlet blood was squeezed out. Through the light, it could be clearly seen that this drop of blood was condensed and extremely heavy, and when it was thrown on the ground, it even emitted a metallic sound like a steel ball falling to the ground. Qi and blood are like mercury, condensing and not dispersing. This is clearly the sign of successful blood refining. A bright color appeared in Chu Mo's eyes. Martial artists, it was the realm of metamorphosis. Bone forging, blood refining, and qi gathering were all a step-by-step process of metamorphosis. Now after blood refining was complete, a single drop of his blood, if instilled into an ordinary person's body, would cause the ordinary person's blood vessels to burst and die in an instant. Early-stage martial artist, quenching the bones of the entire body, when walking and behaving emits the thunderous sound of a tiger and leopard, it is the sign of great success in forging the bones, thus entering the middle stage of martial artist. Mid-stage blood refining, replenishing the qi and blood with a large amount of nutrients, in the constant consumption and replenishment, making the qi and blood constantly thickened. Eventually the qi and blood is like mercury, blood refining is accomplished. Subsequently, one can then mellow the qi and blood, open up the dantian in the body, and harbor a mouthful of vital energy. Right now, since my blood refining has come to fruition, I should make a big effort to step into the late martial artist realm. Think and do. Without the slightest hesitation, Chu Mo directly mobilized his entire body's qi and blood, preparing to open up the dantian in his body. Chapter 43, Late Martial Artist, 800,000 pounds of strength. At this moment Chu Mo's bones were emitting a surging luster, his qi and blood were rolling like a rushing river, and his body was emitting a terrifying might. And all over his body, every bone was also emitting a crackling sound, and every trace of qi and blood in his veins was churning with it. The muscle epidermis that was covered under the clothes was instantly rising, the whole body was red, and sweat fell like rain. The muscles of the whole body began to tremble uncontrollably, and the bones in the body even transmitted a sharp pain, as if the bones of the whole body were broken in general. This pain, wave after wave, impacted Chu Mo's soul. This was the sinews trembling and trembling, it was the blood qi boiling. To open up the internal dantian, one needed to mobilize the strength of the entire body, fusing the entire body's essence and qi into one, and at the same time, at the time of sublimation, using the natural constitution to guide the outside world's yuan qi infusion, so as to be able to open up successfully. Many martial artists, because of the lack of talent and physique, even if they have already accomplished blood refining, but want to open the dantian but still need to slowly accumulate yuan qi, but Chu Mo was different. With a high-level cultivation physique, a high-level sword cultivation talent, a medium wind attribute and a low-level thunder attribute talent, and a second-level spatial talent, so many talents made the yuan qi he could absorb seem like an ocean, and there was no shortage at all. Therefore, there was absolutely no need to grind water and slowly build up his yuan qi. At this moment, one could only see Chu Mo's body's qi and blood and all of his essence flowing towards his abdomen, and at the same time, a majestic yuan qi from the heavens and earth also poured in along his pores. Rumble. A loud rumble resounded within the body. Although no sound was emitted, Chu Mo could truly feel it. Under these rumblings, his muscles, bones, and qi and blood were undergoing earth-shattering changes. It was difficult to know how long had passed. Chu Mo suddenly felt that the originally obscure abdomen within his body suddenly opened up a small space. At the same time, a faint warm current was abruptly born out of thin air. The dantian has opened up, and yuan qi is self-generated. Late martial artist. It's done. A smile appeared on Chu Mo's face. Having just condensed yuan qi made Chu Mo somewhat unable to hold back his inner excitement for a moment, wanting to try out how strong he was. At this moment, being in the advanced quiet room of the hidden martial building, there was an advanced strength testing machine right inside the room. Moving to the front, Chu Mo took a deep breath, then mobilized his entire body's strength and punched out. Boom! The terrifying fist force shook the surrounding void with layers of ripples. Because the speed and punch force was too terrifying, even the air emitted a shrill whistle. And when the punch landed on the machine directly let out a violent ring. At the very top, a line of numbers jumped out. 100,132. Late martial artist, 100,000 pounds of tremendous strength. Next, try the effect after yuan power addition and thunder attribute increase. Chu Mo's eyes stared, silently mobilized the yuan power that had just been generated in his body, then raised his fist once again and fiercely punched it. Splat! Along with the increase in yuan power, the power of this punch was even more terrifying than before. The numbers jumped once again. 200,000 pounds of enormous power. Utilizing the power increase of the thunder attribute talent. With a single punch, under a fourfold increase, it was a full 800,000 gene. Terrifying. Looking at this number that he had punched out, even Chu Mo himself could not help but be secretly shocked. 800,000 pounds of strength. How terrifying was this? It was enough to be able to open mountains and break rivers with it. When an ordinary martial artist reaches the peak realm, their physical strength is at most 200,000 pounds, which is already the limit. Even with a yuan power increase, it's only 400,000 pounds at best. And I have the thunder attribute talent, with the talent increase and yuan power enhancement, it's enough to reach 800,000 pounds. Based on strength alone, I've already completely exceeded the level of a peak martial artist. Coupled with my various talents and martial skills, even amongst martial masters, it's already hard to meet an enemy. Thinking of this, Chu Mo's eyes gradually brightened. In other words, nowadays, my strength might already be comparable to that of an ordinary grandmaster. This was of course Chu Mo's conjecture. What kind of strength a sect master possessed, he wasn't very clear about, but as long as it wasn't too outrageous, he, with his spatial talent, was confident that he wasn't weak. There weren't many days left until the day the secret realm opened. Therefore, Chu Mo did not build in seclusion, but rather absorbed heaven and earth yuan qi in a moderate manner, growing the yuan power within his dantian. At the martial realm, the mastery and utilization of yuan power only remained at an extremely shallow level. It was mainly reflected in the increase in strength. It was commonly around double. As for the preliminary step into the late martial artist stage and the late senior martial artist stage, it was mainly reflected in the amount of yuan power in the body. The more yuan power there was, the longer the increase in strength would be. To draw an analogy, two martial artists who had also opened their dantian. Both have a basic physical strength of 100,000 pounds. And one of them had more yuan power in his body, and when the two were fighting, one's yuan power had been depleted, and his power naturally fell back to 100,000 pounds. The other senior martial artist, on the other hand, was still maintaining the level of 200,000 pounds. Comparing the two, there was naturally a strength and weakness. And Chu Mo had relied on his strong talent and physique in the past few days, also allowing the yuan power at the dantian to accumulate quite a bit. Although it was not comparable to those senior martial artists. But it could also support a high-intensity fight. Time rushed by. Soon, 20 days passed. On this day, Chu Mo was in the middle of cultivation when he suddenly opened his eyes. Under his spatial perception, he could clearly see that a martial artist was standing outside the door and was planning to knock. This person, wearing the costume of Jade House. It was clearly the henchman that Mo Shanshan had sent to invite Chu Mo over. The time to enter the secret realm has arrived. This thought flashed through his mind. Chu Mo stood up and walked straight towards the door. Creak. Outside the door, this Jade House martial artist was just about to knock on the door, but suddenly saw the door opening. Immediately, he then saw Chu Mo walk out with an indifferent face. His body's aura was calm and condensed, looking as if he was facing a mountain abyss, so he could not help but feel solemn. This martial artist immediately froze, and the words he was about to say were stuck in his mouth. I already know your intentions, bring me forward. Chu Mo glanced at him and said in a faint voice. Yes. Hearing that, this martial artist busily collected his mind and then led the way in front. Half an hour later, Chu Mo arrived outside the base and met Mo Shanshan in a clearing in a dense forest. At this time, there were already 30 to 40 martial artists here. After Chu Mo's eyes roughly swept, he realized that each of these martial artists was actually at the peak martial artist realm. Worthy of being from a large base, the strength of the Jade Merchant Alliance is really strong. Chu Mo's heart was in awe. Although he knew that the Jade Merchant Alliance had a huge power, it was still unbelievable that they had gathered nearly 40 peak martial artists so quickly. Moreover, the secret realm was a matter of great importance, and it was bound to be impossible for outsiders to know about it, so these 40 peak martial artists in front of him were still all trustworthy people. A glimpse of a spot reveals the whole picture. The power of the Jade Merchant Alliance was truly terrifying. Chapter 44, Entering the Secret Realm, Looking Up and Encountering Treasure. You're here. Seeing Chu Mo, Mo Shanshan came up to greet him. Coming. Chu Mo nodded his head indifferently, and at that moment, the other martial artists all gazed over. Let me introduce to you all, this is Chu Mo Chu Hakai. His battle power is very strong, even compared to me. He is the assistant I specially hired. This secret realm expedition, which hides countless unknown dangers, you all must be careful. All actions follow the orders of Master Mo and Guest Secretary Chu. Whoever goes against the grain, don't blame me for being unsympathetic. At this moment, the Zhou surname martial artist who was following behind Mo Shanshan snapped. Hearing these words, all the martial artists in the room shouted in unison, we understand. Very good. Martial Master Zhou nodded with satisfaction and looked at the time, then said, the time for the secret realm is approaching, all of you get ready to enter at any time. The crowd of martial artists all looked solemn and waited quietly. As for Chu Mo, he also stood in place, looking around while waiting for the secret realm to open a moment later. Chu Mo suddenly moved his expression and sensed an abnormal fluctuation coming from a certain space in front of him. Almost simultaneously, The time has come. Mo Shanshan finished in an urgent voice. At this moment, her face was solemn as she looked at the void in front of her, and an exquisite jade disc, about the size of a palm, suddenly appeared in her hand. Yuan power was poured into it, and a dazzling light immediately appeared on the jade disc. Mo Shanshan took the mirror reflected by this jade disc and shone it towards the front. Buzz buzz buzz. The mid-air irradiated by the light emitted a toothsome sharp sound, and a crack arose from it, as if the mirror was shattered, with some whistling turbulence and black chi vaguely transmitting from within it. A moment later, accompanied by a cracking sound, a pitch-black entrance finally appeared. The length and width were both about 3 meters or so, forming a portal shape that refracted golden light and rotated endlessly, which was spectacular. After the portal was finalized, Mo Shanshan said loudly, "This secret realm can last up to a month. Once you can't get out for more than a month, it's likely that you'll never be able to get out again. In addition, entering the secret realm may result in an ensuing teleportation. Everyone's location is different. Everyone must keep in mind, after entering, make sure to send out a communication message at the first time after ensuring safety. All of you close and towards me and act in unison. Do you all understand?" "Please don't worry, miss, we understand." The crowd of martial artists all said one after another. Mo Shanshan nodded in satisfaction. "Everyone, enter the secret realm in order." At this moment, the old woman surnamed Shou loudly urged at this moment. And those martial artists who were waiting in a tight formation all silently, either singly or in groups, flew into the passageway one batch at a time. Soon, only Chu Mo and Mo Shanshan were left. Before the two of them were about to enter the gateway, Mo Shanshan suddenly turned her head to Chu Mo and said, "Guest Minister Chu, after you go in, make sure to send a signal as soon as possible to rendezvous with me." "I know." Chu Mo nodded. Only after receiving Chu Mo Shanshan's reply did she feel relieved, and then she took a step ahead and entered the portal. As for Chu Mo, he also followed closely behind and took a step into it. The moment he stepped into it, he felt that his head was blinded, and then the sky spun around, as if he had crossed a membrane, and when he opened his eyes again, the world had already changed. The secret realm. Inside a peak mountain range, the original empty place. A crack suddenly appeared in mid-air, in which you can vaguely see some of the whistling spatial force tumbling. Not long after, the crack bulged, as if something was about to appear. Boo! Along with the sound of some kind of sound breaking, a figure was spat out from the crack. This person was clearly none other than Chu Mo. The figure landed on the ground, slightly easing the dizziness caused by crossing space, and then began to raise his eyes to look around. The spatial perception ability swiftly scanned the surroundings, and within a radius of 50 meters, all of them fell into the Heart Lake. There is no danger for the time being. After determining that it was safe, Chu Mo secretly felt relieved. He didn't know much about the secret realm, of which he mostly knew from Mo Shanshan's mouth. And the canonical books of this world also had very few records of the secret realm, and even if they did, they were mostly half an armor, speaking in very general terms. At the beginning, Chu Mo still felt strange, why the records of the secret realm in the canonical books would be so at least, but then he realized. The secret realm is precious, only the big forces can have it, and the big forces can't wait to cover up the news of the secret realm, and how could they possibly let the ordinary martial artists know the inside story? Therefore, Chu Mo could only guess through Mo Shanshan's narration, combined with his own vision. But there was no doubt about it. Any secret realm with life on either side could be dangerous. Especially such a place with rich vitality and active yuan qi. Chu Mo raised his head and carefully surveyed his surroundings. Being in the middle of a mountain range. Surrounding them were huge trees that covered the sky. As far as the eye could see, a random tree was incredibly thick, requiring at least a few people to hug it. And on the ground, there were even countless lush grasses and vines. In addition to that, who inhale? Chu Mo took a deep breath, then slowly exhaled out. Accompanying this exhale and inhale, Chu Mo could feel that the yuan qi at the dantian in his body was enlivened a bit with it, as if some sort of shackles were opened, and even without running the body forging technique, he could feel an increase in strength. The vitality of this place is so rich, and with such thick yuan qi permeating the area, to say that there are no ferocious beasts being born is really impossible. Chu Mo secretly thought in his heart. And just as Chu Mo had just had this thought, suddenly, he saw a bright light explode in the distant sky, as brilliant as fireworks. Chu Mo knew. This was the summoning message. It seems like they have all determined that it's safe and have begun to gather as well. There's no time to lose, I'll go over as soon as possible as well. Chu Mo then also walked over in the direction of the transmission message. He didn't walk quickly, but instead, he always operated his spatial talent, monitoring his surroundings and being wary of any dangers that might appear just. He had just walked for a while. While he didn't encounter any dangers, Chu Mo encountered an opportunity. Not far away, a 5-colored petal orchid was growing alone, and a rich yuan power and vitality filled the surroundings. A 500-year-old 5-colored petal orchid. Chu Mo recognized it with a glance. It was a rare spirit grass that had been recorded in the Encyclopedic Illustrated Guide to Common Ferocious Beast Plants. Within the Luyang base, even a 100-year-old colorful Xianlan could be sold for 100,000 lower-grade yuan stones. And for a 500-year-old 5-colored Xianlan, it was at least 1,000,000 yuan stones. In other words, Chu Mo had come to the secret realm for only a few minutes, and had already obtained the harvest of an ordinary martial artist who had worked hard for half a lifetime. A secret realm land is truly rich in resources. No wonder the appearance of any secret realm would cause big forces to grab and fight. It's really because the benefits of this are too great. Chu Mo couldn't help but lament. As he spoke, he dug down this 5-colored Xian orchid, put it into a jade box for preservation, and then put it into his storage bag. Chapter 45 Confluence. The journey continued to approach in the direction the signal was communicating. Halfway, occasionally, he would come across some good things, and Chu Mo would pick them off. Having only entered the secret realm for just over an hour, Chu Mo had already picked quite a few spirit herbs, and apart from his initial surprise, he was now calm in mind and face. Squatting down in front of a ginseng that was around 800 years old, Chu Mo carefully picked it, moving gently to clear the mud and sand from the roots and whiskers. He then took out a jade box from his storage bag and carefully placed the ginseng with all its limbs and dense roots and whiskers into it. After doing all this, just ready to continue on the road. Who knew that just at this moment, he suddenly moved his expression and looked towards a spot. Not far away, several wolves with huge bodies and grimacing teeth slowly surrounded. They all carried a ferocious aura on their bodies, their eyes revealed a ghostly green color, and their gazes towards Chu Mo carried salivation. Grade 2 upper-class ferocious beast. Green-backed demon wolf. Chu Mo's eyes condensed, and his palm had already touched the alloy battle sword. It coincided with this moment. Ow! Ow! These few devil wolves directly then rushed over, in different directions, wanting to surround Chu Mo. Seeing this, clang! The battle sword was steeply sheathed. Chu Mo's gaze was sharp, his body shape was like electricity. He turned around and dodged the demonic wolf's pounce, and then his body was filled with chi and blood, and he directly slashed towards these several demonic wolves. The clear and cold blade light carried infinite coldness, cutting through the sky. Ka-chow! Ka-ching! Chu Mo slowly withdrew his blade. In front of him, the bodies of these several devil wolves stiffened, and then their respective corpses separated and fell to the ground. Decapitating them cleanly, Chu Mo crossed over their corpses and headed straight towards the set direction. It was another hour. He finally arrived at the place of rendezvous. He saw that there were already more than a dozen martial artists converging, and Mo Shanshan was also among them. However, they had encountered some trouble at the moment. Hundreds of ferocious beasts had surrounded them, and a melee was currently taking place. Although these beasts were all second-grade beasts, they were after all extremely numerous. The martial artists were only about 10 people, even though they were powerful, all of them were at the peak of the martial artist realm, and under the coordination of each other, they quickly killed more than a dozen fierce beasts. But then, more ferocious beasts then rushed over. This caused them to begin to gradually lose strength, and some of the martial artists had even been injured. Seeing this situation, Chu Mo directly appeared. The wind attribute talent was then unleashed. The entire person wrapped in the powerful blade momentum, his figure was as swift as the wind, and he broke into the group of ferocious beasts. Gale-robbing thunder blade. One blade was faster than the other, and one blade was more vicious than the other. It was like a sharp wind and rain that poured down, as if a gale was passing through, sweeping through everything. Wherever it passed, the daggers swept across the sky. Every knife fall will bring up a string of blood like a note, every knife raised, accompanied by the death of a ferocious beast. This kind of killing like nobody's business also attracted the attention of everyone in the room. It's Guest Minister Chu. Mo Shanshan instantly spoke out in surprise. Guest Minister Chu has come to help, all of you must hold on. When the crowd of martial artists heard that, their spirits were lifted. As for those ferocious beasts, seeing how terrifying Chu Mo was, they all also switched their targets and rushed towards him. Obviously, the ferocious beasts also took Chu Mo as their biggest threat. They wanted to be the first to eliminate Chu Mo. However, the intentions of these ferocious beasts were destined to fall short. Chu Mo's body was like electricity. These ferocious beasts were unable to capture his figure at all, while the long knife in Chu Mo's hand kept falling, taking away the life of a ferocious beast with every strike. Plus, because of Chu Mo's arrival, a large number of ferocious beasts were restrained. All of these martial artists were also under a lot of pressure, and they revitalized their spirits. Both sides cooperated. Within a few moments, all of these demonic beasts were soon decimated, and a large number of corpses fell. Everyone, quickly clean up the battlefield and recover your strength. After the battle ended, Mo Shanshan commanded. The crowd of martial artists then cleaned up the battlefield individually, taking down the heart blood of these ferocious beasts. Mo Shanshan, on the other hand, came to Chu Mo and said gratefully, Chu Mo, this time, it's thanks to having you. While speaking, there was still a touch of incredulity in her eyes as she looked at Chu Mo. Although she had previously seen Chu Mo strike, and had even heard Qian Yuan recount Chu Mo's greatness, she ultimately did not have a clear concept of Chu Mo's power earlier. When Chu Mo had used his martial arts and stance to kill the ferocious beasts, the combat power he had displayed had almost exceeded her imagination. This also made Mo Shanshan have a completely new understanding of Chu Mo's strength. It wasn't just Mo Shanshan. Those other martial artists who were cleaning up the battlefield also gazed over from time to time. There was respect and awe in their eyes. Before entering the secret realm, Mo Shanshan had said that Chu Mo's strength was powerful, and at that time, they were still somewhat unconvinced in their hearts. Even if it was powerful, how powerful could it be? But now, they could clearly see. Chu Mo was strong enough to crush any of them. Even all of them put together were not Chu Mo's opponents. There's no need to say such polite words between us. Chu Mo waved his hand, then looked at the corpses of the surrounding ferocious beasts and asked in disbelief, how did you guys come across so many ferocious beasts? More than 100 grade 2 ferocious beasts. This was almost a huge beast group. Hearing this, Mo Shanshan's face revealed a touch of helplessness. I saw a cherished medicinal herb on the road, and after picking it, I actually happened to bump into the guarding fierce beast coming back, so I casually killed it. It's just that this ferocious beast howled before it died, and I didn't care at that time, so I just left. Who knew that this ferocious beast was the leader of a herd, and after hearing its howl, hundreds of ferocious beasts chased after it, surrounded us, and then a great battle broke out. Towards the end, Mo Shanshan's face also showed a touch of depression. And as Chu Mo listened, his jaw dropped. It was no wonder that Mo Shanshan was so depressed. After all, it was truly unlucky to encounter such a thing. Then what should we do next? Chu Mo asked. Mo Shanshan said, "This is a small secret realm, the space isn't that big, let's wait here first, and when everyone has converged over, then we can explore together." Hearing this, Chu Mo nodded. He did not know much about the secret realm. Therefore, how to explore and act, he naturally listened to Mo Shanshan's arrangements. Running around aimlessly on his own was definitely no match for targeted scraping. Thinking like this, Chu Mo sought out a clean location on his own, sat down on his knees, and closed his eyes to recuperate. Time flowed slowly. One by one, the martial artists gradually converged. By the evening, people had already arrived. And at this time, Mo Shanshan also sent someone to let Chu Mo over to discuss the matters of exploring the secret realm. Listening to the martial artist's report, Chu Mo opened his eyes, jumped down from the big tree, and walked towards the temporary camp not far away. Chapter 46, Hidden Killing Opportunity. Inside the camp, in front of the campfire, Chu Mo was chatting with Mo Shanshan. "Chu Mo, according to our previous agreement, after entering the secret realm, you helped me obtain the Xianyuan Chalcedony, remember?" Mo Shanshan opened her mouth and said, "Remember." Chu Mo nodded. "Then, aren't you curious about what the Xianyuan Chalcedony actually is?" Mo Shanshan laughed. "If you want to say it, you'll naturally say it, and I've already promised you that this item belongs to you, so what can I do even if I know?" Chu Mo said, "Besides, if this treasure is truly too precious, it would be a good thing for me not to know. In that case, I won't develop greed." Hearing Chu Mo's words, Mo Shanshan couldn't help but reveal a flash of appreciation. She then revealed a serious look on her face and said frankly, "Truth be told, the Xianyuan Chalcedony is actually a kind of heaven and earth precious treasure, capable of allowing martial artists to break the limits of their realm, and have a much thicker foundation. For example, in the case of a martial artist, the peak realm can only possess a maximum of 200,000 pounds of physical strength, whereas with the Xianyuan Chalcedony, it is able to allow a martial artist to break through the 200,000 pounds limit and possess 300,000 pounds, or even 400,000 pounds of physical strength. What this represents is having a higher growth ceiling in the future." Speaking here, Mo Shanshan's face revealed a longing and yearning look, breaking the limits of the realm. Chu Mo, who was on the side, listening to Mo Shanshan's words, his eyes could not help but condense. According to what Mo Shanshan said, the Xianyuan Chalcedony was capable of breaking the limit of a martial artist's physical body. This also meant that once he was able to obtain the Xianyuan Chalcedony, he would be able to possess a physical strength of over 200,000 pounds at the martial artist realm, making his preliminary accumulation more robust than other martial artists, and naturally his future growth ceiling would be higher. And Chu Mo possessed the increase of many talents. The stronger his base strength was, the stronger he would be after the increase. Just imagine. If Chu Mo could have a strength of 400,000 pounds when he was in the martial artist realm, once he received the Yuan power enhancement and talent increase, how terrifying would his strength be? Yuan power enhancement, 1 punch, 800,000 pounds. Thunder attribute talent increase, under a full strike, it was over 3,200,000 pounds. At the martial artist realm, having a strength of over 3 million pounds, how terrifying was this? Thinking about this, Chu Mo was instantly moved. But then, he dismissed this greed. In life, there was something to do and something not to do. Since he had already promised not to snatch this treasure, then he had to do what he said he would do. Not to mention that Chu Mo had a talent for gathering. In the future, he might not be able to break the limits of his own strength, so why would he want to turn against Mo Shanshan, who could be called a friend for the sake of this benefit in front of him? Only. Just as Chu Mo was thinking like this, he heard Mo Shanshan continue to speak. "I didn't explain it to you before entering the secret realm, because I wasn't sure if there was one within the secret realm or not, and after I came in, I realized that the key to this secret realm transmitted a lot of information to me. And at the same time I could rely on the jade disc to vaguely sense the direction of the Earth's veins and the Yuan pivot. Xianyuan Chalcedony, grows in places where earth veins pivot and yuan qi converge, and a place that matches such a condition within the secret realm happens to have a place that perfectly matches, and will definitely give birth to Xianyuan chalcedony. And such places tend to have a large number of ferocious beasts gathering. In addition, I can sense that this secret realm is not as simple as it seems. I'm afraid that my power alone is too weak, so I need your help. If I can get the Xianyuan chalcedony, I can share half of it with you. What do you think? Mo Shanshan said with a gloomy face. Hearing this, Chu Mo frowned and couldn't help but ask, "What do you mean when you say that this secret realm isn't as simple as it seems on the surface?" "I'm not sure." Mo Shanshan shook her head. "The information given by the jade disc is intermittent and incomplete, but I have a vague feeling that this secret realm seems to be somewhat unusual, and I'm afraid that it's even more dangerous than what I had previously envisioned." Hearing, Chu Mo stood in place and fell into deep thought. A moment later, he raised his head. "I originally promised you that I would help you get the Xianyuan chalcedony, so naturally I won't go back on my word. However, this item is also of great use to me. Since you are willing to send me half of it, I will no longer pretend to excuse myself. I promise. As for the dangers of this place, you don't have to worry too much." Speaking here, Chu Mo paused. Suddenly the words turned, words with infinite confidence, laughed. "Even how dangerous it is again, the space of the secret realm here is fragile, resulting in the realm is limited to below the martial master. As long as it doesn't exceed this category, I'm sure I can protect your safety." These words could truly be described as overbearing. When Mo Shanshan heard it, she couldn't help but show a flash of color in her eyes as well. However, she quickly came back to her senses and smiled like a flower, saying, "In that case, then I'm counting on you. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." Chu Mo nodded slightly. Today was already night, so there was no departure. The team then camped here to rest for the night and waited for tomorrow morning before setting off. The camp was preparing a meal, and after eating it, they all rested separately. At the same time, in a valley that was unknown how far away from them, the figures of hundreds of ferocious beasts were currently kneeling respectfully on the ground. They were said to be ferocious beasts, but in reality, they all had some human characteristics on their bodies. Some were clearly birds but had human feet, while others had the upper body of a human and the lower body of a wolf, in varying forms. And at this moment, in front of these half-human half-beasts, there was a huge body of more than 10 meters, long human face of the golden-winged rock stood on a tall mountain stone, enjoying the kneeling of all the people. Suddenly, this golden-winged rock bird opened its eyes, and a flash of appalling sharpness flashed through its eyes as it murmured, "Feel it. I've felt it. After 500 years, I've finally felt the breath of the Wanhua disc." A flash of excitement appeared on its face as it uttered the words Wanhua disc. They were originally a group of ferocious beasts, and because they had been living in this place called the 10,000 Wonders mysterious realm, they had developed a spiritual intelligence over time as their strength increased. But unfortunately, because there was a restriction within the secret realm that the highest strength could not be that of a second-level demonic beast. Therefore, these ferocious beasts, even though each of them has been cultivating in the secret realm for hundreds or even thousands of years, and in the outside world, they are all at least level 5 or even above level 5 ferocious beasts, but they have been trapped here, not daring to improve. However, hundreds of years of cultivation, they did not consume empty time for nothing. Generating spiritual intelligence, they have already known that this is a small world, and this small world has a core, which is the key to open this space. As long as they can get this key, they can find a way out. But they had searched the entire secret realm and had not found it. And nowadays he sensed the aura of the Wanhua disc. But the golden-winged rock frowned. "In addition to the Wanhua disc, I likewise smelled some unfamiliar outsider scents. This father orders you all to kill those obtrusive outsiders and take back the Wanhua disc. This is our only chance to get out, there is no room for error." Hearing these words, all the half-humans and half-beasts below shouted in unison, "As you command." The words fell. They then acted individually and left the place one after another. Chapter 47, Terrifying Fierce Beast. Daybreak had just dawned. The team was already fully loaded and ready to go. Mo Shanshan brought the jade disc to guide the way, while the other martial artists all escorted to the side, carefully and vigilantly taking precautions. Their speed was not slow. Half a day passed, and the team crossed a long distance, during which they also encountered quite a few ferocious beasts, and even small groups of beasts. However, with the protection of 30 to 40 peak martial artists, coupled with Chu Mo's heaven-defying strength, any ferocious beasts that came in front of them would only end up being decapitated. Thus, it was also considered to be a scare. The secret land is really dangerous. Luckily, you had Chu Mo to protect me along the way, otherwise, I wouldn't have dared to hope to get the Xianyuan chalcedony in this secret realm at all. On the way, Mo Shanshan lamented to Chu Mo. Listening to these words, Chu Mo just smiled and didn't say anything. If one were to take Mo Shanshan's words seriously, it would be too innocent. After all, Mo Shanshan was a high-ranking member of the Jade Merchant Alliance, and to be able to become a peak martial artist within 2 years, her talent was bound to be very extraordinary. Chu Mo didn't believe that she didn't have the means to save her life, not to mention. She had also comprehended sword intent, and was even more profound than Chu Mo in her attainments of sword intent. Even if her strength was inferior to Chu Mo's, it was not something that an ordinary martial artist could compare to. The two of them talked while rushing along. At this time, the team arrived in front of a valley. The valley was narrow and surrounded by towering cliffs. The terrain was extremely treacherous. Everyone couldn't help but speed up their steps, wanting to quickly cross this area. Whoosh! 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 Right at this moment, a burst of sharp, air-breaking whistling sounds came steeply, wrapped in a terrifying killing aura and might, attacking towards them. A few martial artists who acted more slowly were directly attacked in such a way that they didn't even have the time to scream, and they directly died, and it was not until then. Only then did they see clearly. The sneak attack on them turned out to be a dozen or so short-statured civet cats. Golden-winged poisonous civet? The golden-winged poisonous civet was a grade 2 ferocious beast, because it had a pair of wings on its body, which could shoot out some slender feathers between swings, and once it hit its target, it could produce extremely terrifying toxins, poisoning its opponents to death in an instant. Only, in their impression of the golden-winged poisonous beaver, the strength is not strong. Ordinary martial artists, as long as a little precautionary shooting out feathers, can fight with them. But right now, these poisonous beavers, why did they have so much speed? And when they paid careful attention to these poisonous beavers, each and every one of them moved with a look of horror on their faces. What kind of monster is this? Under their gazes, they saw that this group of impressionable golden-winged poisonous beavers had limbs that were surprisingly like human limbs, and on their necks and bodies, certain places were surprisingly showing traces of humans as well. On the claws of the limbs, they were even more sharp, like steel knives, and the two men shuddered. This is still the golden-winged poisonous beaver. All the martial artists, they only felt cold sweat all over their body, cool air ran up from the soles of their feet, and for a while their minds were in chaos. And right at this moment, the dozen or so strange golden-winged poisonous beavers all rushed in, and in the blink of an eye there were a few dazed martial artists killed. Seeing this, the martial artists also all hid the fear in their hearts and fought with these strange ferocious beasts. The scene was a mess. However, as time passed, the fear in their hearts then rose higher and higher. The golden-winged poisonous beavers in the outside world were not very strong, even a mid-stage realm martial artist could fight against them. And these dozen or so martial artists in front of them, surprisingly, each of them was very strong. Not only was their speed surprisingly fast, but their defense was also extremely terrifying. When their swords slashed at these poisonous beavers, they couldn't even break open the wounds, and could only emit a sound of gold and iron clashing. This also led to The dozen or so golden-winged poisonous beavers facing 30 to 40 peak realm martial artists unexpectedly did not lose the slightest bit of ground, and even beat them back. Chu Mo. Seeing this situation, Mo Shanshan immediately spoke out anxiously. There was no need for her to call out. Almost the instant these strange golden-winged poisonous beavers broke into the crowd, Chu Mo had already touched his palm on top of his alloy battle sword. Clang! The sound of a sword being drawn and sheathed resounded steeply. The wind attribute talent was directly activated, and the 15 times increase in speed caused Chu Mo's body to be like lightning as he rushed into the demonic beasts. Skybreaking blade. An extremely sharp blade light chopped out, instantly spanning a distance of more than 10 feet, arriving in front of a ferocious beast. Before that ferocious beast could react, it immediately pierced through its body. Pfft. A dull sound of flesh breaking open rang out, and the demonic beast's body stiffened, then exploded. Killing the golden-winged poisonous beaver with a single strike caused the other ferocious beasts to be extremely shocked. Merely. Those fierce beasts shocked to shock, Chu Mo is face unchanged, still calm. He did not therefore stay, but see the body shape rapidly transformed, the body of chi and blood power crazy boiling, majestic chi and blood filled the blade body, so that the alloy war knife was covered with a layer of dazzling light. He swung his sword forward, and the cold light on his sword flashed wildly, instantly cutting through the sky and arriving at the top of the head of another ferocious beast. This ferocious beast only felt that the upper and lower part of his body was densely packed with knife light, which actually gave him a feeling that he could not avoid it. What's more, an invisible pressure also fell on his heart. What is this? Why is his blade so strong? The leader of this ferocious-looking beast, in a moment of desperation, even spat out human words and exclaimed loudly in shock. However, his eyes, which were originally emitting a hideous and cruel look, were now glaring round, and in his heart, he was even more frightened to the point of splitting his liver and gall bladder. This knife. The speed was extremely fast. And with the addition of Yuan power, the power was also terrifyingly great. Coupled with the addition of the blade's momentum, it made this ferocious beast simply unavoidable. Pfft! The blade light flashed through the head. That golden-winged poisonous beaver's incomparably hard-looking body was easily pierced through like tofu. After killing this ferocious beast, Chu Mo's expression remained without the slightest change. Wind attribute talent. Gale robbing thunderblade. Luo smoke steps. Blade stance. Many martial arts techniques and talents were stacked and executed, but his figure was seen as if he was a ghost, weaving back and forth amongst these ferocious beasts, and every blade that fell represented a ferocious beast that was cut down. The speed was so fast that everyone couldn't even see the figure. Chu Mo's speed is too fast. It's already more than 5 times the speed of sound, close to a top sect master. He's only a martial artist, and he has this kind of speed. Could it be that he also has a wind attribute talent? Beside, Mo Shanshan was deeply shocked and couldn't help but marvel out. And just as Mo Shanshan was shocked, with Chu Mo's strikes, in just a moment's time, the dozen or so attacking ferocious beasts had already been killed by Chu Mo. At the scene, it was completely quiet. Gulp. I don't know who it was that suddenly gulped a mouthful of water, which seemed so clear at this moment looking around. It was discovered that all these martial artists froze at some point, each and every one of them staring blankly at Chu Mo, their eyes filled with shock. They thought they already had a clear perception of Chu Mo's strength. But until now, they realized that they had still underestimated Chu Mo. These dozen or so extremely strange-looking ferocious beasts were each ridiculously strong, and dozens of their peak martial artists were only able to retreat in a lopsided defeat. And yet, Chu Mo was able to kill them all with his own strength. Such strength was truly unbelievable. Chapter 48, Finding the Xian Yuan, Chalcedony, Boundary Source Stone. What exactly are these ferocious beasts from? After the great battle, Chu Mo and Mo Shanshan examined the corpses of these ferocious beasts. They discovered that the flesh of each of these ferocious beasts was very strong, exceeding the boundaries of a grade 2 ferocious beast. What's more, during the previous killings, these ferocious beasts were actually able to spit out human words. In the outside world, being able to spit out human words would at least mean that they were grade 5 ferocious beasts. But this was simply impossible. If it was really a 5th level beast in front of them, they would not have the slightest chance to resist. Not to mention that in this secret realm, because of the weak spatial barrier, it was impossible for all the ferocious beasts to exceed the threshold of level 2, or else they would shatter the space around them and thus be annihilated by the spatial turbulence. However, the truth was clearly laid out in front of them, causing them to show a look of gravity for a moment. It seems that there are indeed quite a few secrets within this secret realm. Master Mo, we'll have to be more careful next. It's imperative that we fetch the Xianyuan Chalcedony as soon as possible, and then decide to stay or go according to the situation. Chu Mo opened his mouth after thinking about it. Hearing this, Mo Shanshan also nodded in agreement. Although the secret realm was good, one had to have the life to explore it. Right now, since it was discovered that there was a very terrifying danger in this secret realm, the best option was to leave as soon as possible. Thinking about this, Mo Shanshan said, "Recover from your injuries as soon as possible. Let's speed up and try to get the things in our hands in the shortest time possible." "Yes," the crowd of martial artists said. At this moment, after a dozen or so ferocious beasts attacked, the original 40 or so peak realm martial artists had also lost quite a few people, and now there were less than 30 left. After going through this, they were all a bit scared as well, and they all wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. After a brief recuperation, they continued on their way. However, this time everyone was even more vigilant, carefully surveying the surroundings to prevent those strange ferocious beasts from reappearing. Although vigilant, however, their speed was not slow. After an hour, they had arrived in front of a cliff. The cliff was 10,000 feet high, an absolute wall, and was quite steep. But as they faced the cliff, they soon realized that in the cliff, there was a cave that was sunken in. "It should be here," Mo Shanshan said softly as she looked at the dark cave below. Chu Mo also gazed over. One could only see that the cave entrance was so deep that one could not see anything at all. "You guys wait here first, the two of us, Chu Hakii and I will go in and take a look." At that moment, Mo Shanshan opened her mouth and commanded. The cave was most likely the location of the Xianyuan Chalcedony, and such a heaven and earth treasure was truly too precious. Although these underlings were all the heart of the Merchant Alliance and were trustworthy, they still needed to be vigilant for a moment or two. After all, the hearts of the people, most of all, cannot be tested. The other martial artists did not know what Mo Shanshan was thinking, and after hearing this, they nodded in agreement. Afterwards, Mo Shanshan glanced at Chu Mo, and the two of them, one after the other, entered the recessed cave in the cliff face below. The cave was very twisting and winding, and the passage was still a bit narrow. The two of them traveled for a long time, estimating that they had traveled a distance of about 10 miles or so, when they saw a clearing in front of them. A huge cave appeared in front of them. The space was thousands of square feet in size, and it looked like a jade mine. The roof of the cave was slowly dripping with clear and translucent water droplets, while on the ground there was a sunken pool, which had already gathered and accumulated a lot of jade liquid. Seeing this jade liquid, Chu Mo could not help but stare. "Xianyuan Chalcedony!" Mo Shanshan exclaimed, a look of surprise on her face. "Are you sure?" Chu Mo asked. "I can be sure. There are records in the family that the Xianyuan Chalcedony, the only way it can be condensed is in a secret realm. This thing looks like clear water, but it is produced from the earth's veins. It is pure and flawless. It contains a mysterious substance that can improve the human body's physique, and if there is light shining on it, it will refract a 7-colored brilliant light, hence the name Xianyuan." And after saying this, a touch of excitement appeared on her face. "It is said that the quantity of Xianyuan Chalcedony is extremely rare, even in those secret realms that are able to produce this item. There is only a very small amount of production, but there is actually so much chalcedony here that it can be divided into at least 10 portions. Chu Mo, we've earned a great deal." Listening to Mo Shanshan's excited words, Chu Mo bent his gaze on the chalcedony, and a touch of joy appeared on his face as well. 10 copies of the Xianyuan chalcedony, which meant that he could get 5 copies. In addition to using it himself, he could also give it to his loved ones to use, and could even sell it for his own cultivation resources. Chu Mo, the Xianyuan chalcedony's preservation requires a special jade bottle. I'll collect these chalcedonies first and then split them with you, what do you think? Mo Shanshan did not immediately make a move to collect it, but first proposed with Chu Mo just in case her rash act of collecting it would be misunderstood by Chu Mo. Chu Mo did not have a bottle on him to preserve the Xianyuan chalcedony, so he naturally agreed to Mo Shanshan's proposal. So Mo Shanshan took out a few special jade bottles from her storage bag and went forward to collect the Xianyuan jade marrow. While she was collecting it, Chu Mo, on the other hand, looked around and surveyed the surroundings. Suddenly, Chu Mo's gaze landed on a wall and his eyes froze. This is... He looked and suddenly his expression moved, then he slowly walked up. Palm Chu Mo went up, and immediately felt as if he had touched inside a recessed area. Sure enough, Chu Mo's face revealed a flash of realization. You remembered that when he was outside the Luyang base, a hidden treasure place he had learned from Zhou Qi also had a layer of natural camouflage. It was only after entering the barrier that he obtained the 10,000 years spiritual marrow, thus promoting all of his natural physique by 1 level overall. And nowadays, when he saw these stone walls, he subconsciously remembered this and gave it a try. Who knew that it was just as he thought? At that exact moment, Mo Shanshan had also finished collecting the Xianyuan chalcedony and just happened to see this scene. Chu Mo, what is this? She asked with some curiosity. There should be something big behind it, let's go in and take a look. After saying that, Chu Mo, alone, took the lead and directly walked in. And when Mo Shanshan saw this, she also didn't hesitate and physically squeezed in. As if through a layer of sticky mucus, the eyes were first dark, and then opened up. Only to see in front of them was a small space, about 12 meters in size. In the center of the area, a fist-sized crystal appeared. Around the crystal, one could vaguely see that the space was all a bit distorted, and the void turbulence that emitted a terrifying aura was whistling uncontrollably. This is... Looking at the crystal, Mo Shanshan instantly changed her face and subconsciously exclaimed, this is actually a boundary source stone. What is a boundary source stone? Chu Mo asked. Boundary source stone is naturally evolved. Every time a small world is born or destroyed, a boundary source stone will appear. This object contains the origin of the world, and can allow one to realize the changes in space. If one absorbs it, it can even allow one to have an epiphany of spatial talent. Mo Shanshan said excitedly. And hearing this, Chu Mo's face also revealed a touch of emotion. Chapter 49 Inferior Spatial Talent, Opening Up Carry-On Space. But it's a pity that there's only this boundary source stone. Although it's still very precious, but wanting to have an epiphany of spatial talent with just a piece of realm source stone is really as difficult as climbing into the sky unless one already possesses a spatial talent. And perhaps there's still a possibility of taking one's talent to the next level. Mo Shanshan revealed a look of regret. Spinning around, she looked at Chu Mo and said, I don't have a spatial talent, so it's useless to take it. Besides, according to the agreement, this item should also belong to you. But I suggest that you don't absorb it yourself either. Without a spatial talent, it's hard to rely on the boundary source stone for an epiphany. Instead of wasting it like this, it would be better to sell it at a high price when you arrive at the big base later. You can maximize the benefits. Mo Shanshan admonished. However, Chu Mo did not think so in his heart when he heard it. If he didn't have a spatial talent, he might have listened. But now that he already had a secondary spatial talent, if he could raise his spatial talent by 1 or 2 levels with the help of the boundary source stone, his strength would be able to rise quite a bit again. After all, they were 2 supreme talents. The more powerful the spatial talent was, the more beneficial it would be to his future growth. Therefore, but whenever there was an opportunity to raise his spatial talent, Chu Mo would never miss it. As for selling it, It might indeed allow him to exchange it for countless yuan stones. But there were many treasures that were far beyond what yuan stones could purchase. And treasures such as the boundary source stone, which could only appear in a secret realm small world, were even more rare and unattainable treasures. Where to exchange them for yuan stones was simply the most foolish behavior. With these thoughts flashing through his mind, Chu Mo took down the boundary source stone and put it into his storage bag. Many thanks to Miss Mo for giving it to me. Chu Mo expressed his gratitude for Mo Shanshan's atmospheric attempt to let it go. There's no need to thank me, this was originally what we agreed upon, besides this item really has no use to me. Mo Shanshan shook her head and said. Hearing this, Chu Mo smiled. And at this time, Mo Shanshan also took out 5 portions of the Shanyuan jade marrow that she had collected and distributed them to Chu Mo, then said, Chu Mo, I intend to swallow the Shanyuan jade marrow here, can you escort me? Of course I can, feel free to take it, no matter what happens, it won't bother hitting you. Chu Mo said without hesitation. Thank you. Mo Shanshan gave a thank you. Then she walked straight to the side and sat down on her knees. After glancing at Chu Mo, she nodded slightly before taking out a portion of Shanyuan chalcedony and directly drinking it in an instant. Through his spatial perception ability, Chu Mo discovered that there seemed to be a mysterious energy between heaven and earth surging towards Mo Shanshan, slowly transforming her body. Along with the passage of time, he could experience that Mo Shanshan's physical body strength was also increasing. Chu Mo took a glance and withdrew his sight, turning to take out the boundary source stone, holding it in his hand and carefully speculating on it. On the boundary origin stone, it contained a terrifying spatial energy. The surrounding space was slightly distorted as a result. Chu Mo closed his eyes and slowly mobilized the spatial talent within his body, then slowly sensed the wonders of the spatial power within the boundary source stone. Very quickly, Chu Mo felt the spatial power in the boundary source stone converge towards him and then be absorbed by himself. As time passed, the amount of spatial force that Chu Mo absorbed increased, and he gradually saw the flow of spatial force, immersing himself in it for a time, unable to extricate himself. An unknown amount of time passed. Chu Mo was still sensing the spatial force, but at this moment, if someone saw it, they would be able to realize that the Chu Mo at this moment was actually giving off a feeling of emptiness. It was obvious that Chu Mo was sitting right where he was, but it gave off a feeling as if he wasn't there. It looked extremely bizarre. Half an hour later. Phew. Chu Mo opened his eyes and couldn't help but let out a long breath, a look of excitement on his face. My spatial talent seems to have grown quite a bit. Checking his information. Target, Chu Mo. Physique, higher cultivation physique. Talent, higher blade cultivation talent, medium wind attribute talent, lower thunder attribute talent, lower spatial talent. Spatial talent, it has been raised to inferior. Chu Mo was very happy. He couldn't wait to sense the spatial abilities he controlled after his talent was elevated to inferior. The first was the spatial perception ability, which had been somewhat enhanced, expanding from the original range of about 50 meters to the current range of 100 meters in a radius. The distance of instantaneous movement had also been expanded accordingly. In addition to that, he realized that he had also gained a new ability. Opening up space. This was not opening up small worlds or secret realms. He might be able to do that in the future, but he was far from being able to touch it now. The space he was currently able to open up was actually just a carry-on space. It was more similar to something like a carry-on storage backpack, leaving a spatial imprint on one's body, followed by injecting spatial energy, extruding a small space, and then just gradually expanding it. It was like blowing up a balloon. And how big the opened-up carry-on space could be was also related to Chu Mo's strength and spatial talent level. Let's start now. Chu Mo made a spatial brand on his palm, and then he poured spatial power towards the neighborhood within it. Along with the influx of spatial power, the spatial brand that was attached to the center of his palm began to gradually expand, and a small black dot eventually appeared. The black dot continued to expand. A moment later, when Chu Mo sensed that it seemed to have reached its limit, it stopped. It wasn't until this moment. Only then did Chu Mo realize that this carry-on space he had opened up actually had 20 cubic meters. Although it still wasn't particularly large, it was already quite a bit larger than his own storage bag. Moreover, the carry-on space could continuously expand as one's strength grew. This also meant, after opening up the carry-on space, he would no longer need a storage bag in the future. Nasuya in a mustard seed, I didn't expect that I would be able to achieve this kind of means. Thinking so, Chu Mo couldn't help but reveal a smile. Carrying all of the items in the storage bag into the carry-on space. Just after doing this, Chu Mo noticed some fluctuations coming from Mo Shanshan's body. Immediately, his eyes gazed up. He saw a strong force emerge from Mo Shanshan's body and sweeping out all the surrounding smoke and dust. However, this did not cause any damage to Chu Mo. After waiting for the smoke and dust to dissipate, it was realized that Mo Shanshan had already woken up. Chu Mo, I broke the limit of a martial artist's physical body. After seeing Chu Mo Shanshan immediately said excitedly, now I feel that I can still grow 100,000 pounds of fleshly body strength, which will allow me to enter the martial master with 300,000 pounds of fleshly body strength, with a more solid foundation and a higher ceiling in the future. Congratulations! Hearing this, Chu Mo sent his blessings from the bottom of his heart. Thank you as well. If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid that I wouldn't have been able to obtain the Xianyuan chalcedony at all, or even died under the attack of those strange ferocious beasts. Mo Shanshan said gratefully. Chapter 50 Heavenly Wolf King. The two were still thanking each other. But just then, rumble. In the distance, there was suddenly a violent sound of fighting that was so powerful that they could feel the earth tremble when they were in the cave. Not good. The people above are under attack. Feeling this fluctuation, Chu Mo suddenly changed his face. Mo Shanshan's face also became grave. Could it be that group of strange ferocious beasts sneaking in? Chu Mo, let's quickly go up and take a look. Good. The two didn't say anything and quickly exited along the way they came. Just returned to the cave entrance. It was then that they saw a tragic fight being staged on the mountain cliff. On one side were nearly 100 ferocious beasts that were half man, half beast, and on the other side were the martial artists that Mo Shanshan had brought with her, who were currently retreating under the attack of these ferocious beasts. Let's go help. Seeing this scene, Chu Mo made an immediate decision and quickly executed his wind attribute talent and rushed over towards the battlefield. These alien humans are really weak, casually being crushed by us. What a bunch of trash. Not far away, a few ferocious beasts with human features were watching the battle. One of them, a ferocious beast in the shape of a human head and horse, said smugly. Sniffing. Next to him, a giant wolf with silver-colored hair snorted coldly with a scowl in its eyes and said, isn't it better for them to be wastes? When we kill all of these foreign humans and get the Wanhua disc to leave here, we will no longer need to be suppressed in our realm, and at that time, with our strength, where in the world will be unobtainable? At that time all of these humans will become our blood food. In the end, a touch of greed appeared in the giant wolf's eyes. Not bad. When the time comes, we must keep these humans in captivity, and eat 10. No, I'm going to eat 100 every day. I'll eat 100 too. Hearing the giant wolf's words, the surrounding ferocious beasts all fantasized. However, just as they were fantasizing, kill! A violent shout rang out from beneath the cliff immediately. A figure as swift as the wind, holding a battle sword, directly killed towards it. Good guts. How dare you seek me out? Who is willing to step in and kill this human martial artist? A flash of brutality flashed in the giant wolf's eyes as it said with a cold snort. The words fell. A ferocious beast behind it then jumped out and shouted, my subordinate is willing to make a move to capture and kill this human and offer it to the Sky Wolf King. Go. The giant wolf nodded slightly. This ferocious beast was a large lizard with certain human features, and at this moment, when it received the order, it roared and rushed out, crashing towards this figure. After Chu Mo came to the cave entrance and saw the fight on the cliff, he wanted to rush in. However, halfway through he realized that there were actually a few ferocious beasts beside the battle group that were spectating, looking like they had different identities. With the idea of capturing a thief, he rushed over with his sword. Who knew that just as he was halfway there, he saw a large lizard charging head-on. The outer skin of its body reflected a cold luster, and it looked very hard. However, seek death. Chu Mo's eyes stared, his wind attribute talent worked steeply, Luo smoke steps were instantly executed, and a puff of clear smoke appeared on the spot. By the time Chu Mo's figure was in sight, he had already arrived in front of this lizard. Gale-robbing thunderblade. Clang. The sound of the battle sword being sheathed abruptly rang out, and an infinite blade chi swept out as the blade chopped out. It chopped towards this lizard. However, that lizard beast didn't sit around and wait for death either. Although his heart was slightly shocked when he saw Chu Mo's speed was so fast, he still quickly came back to his senses and smashed over with a flick of his tail splat. The tail was like a long whip, whistling, and because the power was too great, it seemed that even the emptiness couldn't withstand it, making an unbearable shattering sound. But when such terrifying might was in the face of the battle sword, it didn't even make the slightest ripple, and was directly crushed by the sword aura. It then chopped at the lizard's body in a smooth manner. Thud. The blade that contained infinite blade chi directly chopped the lizard's body into two. It didn't even have a chance to let out a miserable scream, and in front of Chu Mo, it had already fallen after only a single glance. This is blade power? The Sky Wolf King looked at this scene, no longer calm as before, but instead his pupils shrunk and his face was shocked. Although it was also a ferocious beast, it had obtained a treasure in the secret realm, and by a fluke returned to its ancestor, obtaining the inheritance of the Tsunami Moon Sky Wolf clan from long ago memories. It learned of the existence of this blade power in their Tsunami Moon Celestial Wolf's inheritance. Any existence that had comprehended the blade momentum would be difficult to deal with. Human, your cultivation is good. If you are willing to surrender now and become a human slave under my seat, this king can be the master of sparing you from death. The Heavenly Wolf King was quite appreciative of Chu Mo's strength and couldn't help but feel a love for talent and wanted to recruit him. This statement came out. Chu Mo immediately let out a cold laugh. District Cloak and Dagger Generation, still want to get Chu's allegiance, really don't know what to say. Human, how dare you? Hearing Chu Mo's words, these ferocious beasts immediately became furious. Although they were indeed beasts in origin, ever since they awakened their spiritual intelligence, they had consciously separated themselves from their original packs and had become exalted existences in the past. When they faced their own communities and saw those foolish and unenlightened kindred, they also disdained them. However, today, this human actually spoke out loud in front of them, calling them the generation with hair and horns. This was simply humiliating them. What arrogance! Sky Wolf King, what are you waiting for? Kill this human. Kill him, let him know how powerful we are. The ferocious beasts behind the Sky Wolf King shouted. Their bodies were boiling with killing intent, with the driving feeling that at the Sky Wolf King's command, they would pounce over together and decapitate Chu Mo. And at this moment, the Sky Wolf King was also seething with anger. Human, you are honoring the wine, but not the wine. Since you seek death, it's not my fault. All beasts listen to the order, surround this person with all your might. As long as you kill him, the remaining human martial artists are not to be feared at all. The Sky Wolf King roared sternly, its voice filled with killing intent along with its words falling. A group of ferocious beasts immediately rushed over, endless killing intent sweeping towards Chu Mo. Sculptor's little skill. Chu Mo held his battle sword and looked at these charging ferocious beasts, the corner of his mouth hooked into a cold smile. As the words fell, the chi and blood in his body surged like a river and sea. Buzz. The wind attribute talent activated, and his figure suddenly flashed, crossing a distance of tens of feet in an instant, directly rushing into the midst of the beasts. The gale-robbing thunderblade was executed. A powerful blade Chi swept out and chopped towards a ferocious beast. Nowadays, Chu Mo had a strength of 100,000 pounds. After the yuan power was added, there was a strength of 200,000 jin. With a fourfold increase in thunder attribute talent, there was 1,200,000 jin of strength. With such a terrifying strength, even a martial master wouldn't be able to resist it, let alone these ferocious beasts that were only second grade. Even if they have been cultivating for hundreds of years, and even born a spirit, if they leave this secret realm, their strength can quickly recover to the 4th or even 5th level. But here, they were ultimately unable to make a qualitative leap. It was so. Facing such a strong killing move from Chu Mo, the ferocious beasts were simply unable to resist. Every time the battle sword fell, there was a ferocious beast that was chopped into two, blood flying.